Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Liberty Report. I'm your host, Alex Newman. It is a great honor to be able to spend a little bit of time with you today. Of course, you know we are big on solutions on this program. As General Flynn, one of the directors of Patriot TV, where you're watching this program, says regularly, local action equals national impact. Most of us can't control what's going on in Congress. Most of us have very little influence over what our U.S. senator is doing or what the president and the White House bureaucracy is doing. But we can have a big impact at the local level. And that is one of the critical battlefronts in the fight to save our country, to save our liberties, to save our families from the wave of evil, the wave of destruction that is washing across our country. And one of the men who's helping to lead that charge is Chris Hall. He's the chairman of the county commission in Collier County, Florida. It's a beautiful place. If you've never been there, I recommend that you go. But under his leadership, the Collier County Commission decided that they were going to protect the liberties of the people in their community. Kind of like when you take your oath and you swear to uphold and defend the Constitution, which of course enshrines your rights. It doesn't give you rights, it enshrines them. So the people in Collier County and their elected representatives decided that they were going to take that very seriously. So Chris joins us now. Chris, it's a great honor to have you on the program. Thank you. I had the pleasure of meeting you at a conference last week, the Foundations of Freedom event. We had sheriffs, we had county officials, state officials, not just from across Florida, but even beyond that across the country. And you shared with me something that you guys had done in Collier County. And I thought, that's huge. We've got to share that with the folks because this is something that can, and in my opinion, should be replicated across America. Tell us about the ordinance that you guys got passed in Collier County.
Well, we passed a play on words. You know how the progressive left will always use sanctuaries for sanctuary cities. Well, we passed a sanctuary county for our Bill of Rights. And basically, it was an ordinance, not a resolution, but an ordinance that we brought forth that gave the sheriff of Collier County the teeth that he needed locally to always protect our liberties, especially the ones that are given to us in the first 10 amendments, not limiting to the 10 amendments, but everything. And the way that that came about was 3 years ago, the commission tried to do this and it failed. It failed 3-2, and they um, they retracted to a resolution, which a resolution just says, "Hey, we're just resolved to protect the liberties of the people," but there was no real teeth involved. So I brought this back again earlier this year, and it's a protection for the Bill of Rights, and you wouldn't think that that was be a big deal. It's part of our Constitution, and why should we need an ordinance locally to protect that? Well, it was obvious to me through COVID, and that was the whole reason why I got aggravated at our local government. I'd never been in government, never dreamed of being in government. I came to Naples to live happily ever after. But I realized that the goal of government, the number one and main goal that's written in the Declaration of Independence, is for government to protect and to secure the liberties of the people. And through COVID and through the COVID pandemic and all that, people they caved. They caved to the federal government. They caved to the bureaucracy. They caved to the media. They just caved. They gave up their liberties. And it didn't sit right with me. And I thought, all right, we're going to do something about that. So that's the main motivation for me bringing this back to get it passed in Collier County.
I've got to admit, Chris, kind of jealous. We tried to do that in our county. The chair of our county commission here where I live is a good friend. He's a great American. He's a great patriot. We've got an entirely Republican county commission. And the majority of our county commissioners said, oh, we don't need to be a constitutional sanctuary. I mean, come on, what do we need that for? And so that measure was voted down last time around here in my county. I'm hoping that we can change that after this upcoming election. But I want to go through a little bit of this ordinance with you. This is so powerful, and I think it could be a role model for folks across the country. I've written a few articles about different efforts in different states. Several counties in Nevada became constitutional counties, several counties in New York. So this isn't just isolated to Florida. It's not just Collier County, but I think Collier County has done one of the boldest things because they made it an ordinance. starts off with, whereas the Collier County Board of Commissioners has growing concerns over the federal government's increasing encroachment on the rights and privileges of its citizens. Of particular concern are those edicts being promulgated by the federal government in the form of executive orders, which circumvent the legislative process and arguably violate the fundamental American doctrine of separation of powers. This is just gold. We've got the Florida Constitution cited in here, Article 1, Section 1, that states that all political power is inherent in the people. And then here's where I want to break for a minute and delve into this. The ordinance says, whereas the 10th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America states the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. This is one of the great parts of our Constitution. Many of our founders didn't even think that needed to be said because everybody will know that if we didn't delegate that power, they don't have it. But break this down for us, Chris. How did we forget what the 10th Amendment says? And what does that actually mean in practice when it comes to limiting the federal government and reserving powers?
It's exactly what it means. And our culture in 2020, in this century, has become so predominantly reliant on the federal government. The federal government is king. And that's exactly why the 10th Amendment was added, even though they thought, why would we ever need this? This is obvious. But I'm so thankful that they did, because those people that created this, our founding fathers, had just come out of extreme tyranny. And they understood that by giving the federal government very few and numbered powers, that the people would have the rights, and the rights would be reserved to the people through the states. And thus, that would be the United States of America. And so that's the whole reason why the 10th Amendment was there. The powers of the federal government they're numbered and they're limited. But yet, the federal government has taken so much power and duped the American people into thinking that they are the supreme authority over everything. They're king. And they're not. So people have to realize that they have the powers through the state to tell the king to sit down, and we'll tell the king, we're the dog, he's the tail. We'll tell him how he wags, how fast he wags, and how high he wags. That's what we have to get back to.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And over the last few generations, we've lost sight of that in America. But it's not because the principles were not good. It's because there was a deliberate effort to make us forget those principles. And so we're going to rekindle those here today, folks. I hope you'll take this episode and share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your own county commissioners. I'm going to keep going through this resolution. There's just so much good stuff in here, folks. I hope you'll take this to your own county commissioners, your own city council, your own state legislators, because this is the kind of thing that will be effective in preserving freedom. And I love how every one of the points in this thing is backed up by either a point from the Constitution, a Supreme Court ruling, a federal statute, a state constitution. It goes on to say, whereas federalism protects the liberty of the individual from arbitrary power, and an individual has a direct interest in objecting to laws that upset the constitutional balance between the national government and the states when the enforcement of those laws causes injury that is concrete, particular, and redressable. Fidelity to principles of federalism is not for the states alone to vindicate. This is a Supreme Court decision, Bond versus United States. It says, whereas the structural principles secured by the separation of powers protect the individual as well. The state of Florida is divided into various counties and municipalities, and Article 8, Section 1F of the Florida Constitution vests such counties with such power of self-government as is provided by general or special law. Florida statutes on the adoption of resolutions and ordinances necessary for counties to exercise that. And then we got Florida statutes explaining that the provisions of this section shall be liberally construed, and not liberal in the bad way, right, in order to effectively carry out the purpose of this section and to secure for the counties the broad exercise of home rule powers authorized by this state constitution. So, folks, this is really powerful stuff. Talk a little bit about that. I know different states have different constitutions and the way that they're set up, but talk about the way Florida is set up. Our counties are supposed to have broad latitude in responding to the wishes of the constituents of those counties. Talk to us about that and how it relates to Collier County and what you guys did.
It's the Florida Constitution is very similar to the U.S. Constitution in principle. And just like the federal Constitution, the powers were given to the people. Florida Constitution is no different. We have counties, we have cities, and there are some things that that the counties are preempted in, but very few things. If the people would rise up through representation, we would get the things, we would get to do the things that the people want to do instead of just sitting there taking it on the chin by big government. Thankfully, we have a very good governor who understands those principles and limits those state powers back to the people mandating things on them. Matter of fact, he's lifted mandates, and I'm so thankful for that. But God forbid anything ever go wrong in Tallahassee, Collier County has an ordinance in place that protects it. And the sheriff is the one who is now empowered by this ordinance to protect the people and all of their liberties and to secure the power for
Yeah.
them.
And several of the things you said are just so important for people to understand, right? And of course, we are blessed here in Florida to have a governor who understands some of these things. Now, he actually did what Collier County is doing against the federal government, right? When Joe Biden was threatening us with vaccine mandates and all kinds of unconstitutional powers, our governor actually stood up and said, "No, I'm going to stand in between you, Joe Biden, and the people of my state. I'm not going to let you mask our kids at gunpoint. I'm not going to let you forcibly vaccinate our people." That's exactly what state governments should have been doing. And very happy to report 26 governors, including Ron DeSantis, have just recently in the last week said they are not going to obey WHO, World Health Organization decrees, directives, or anything of that sort. That's most of our governors. So, folks, we need this at the state level and at the county level. We're at a time in this segment when we get back, we're going to talk about the anti-commandeering doctrine. Folks, this is so important to understand. The federal government is not in charge of your state government or your county government. And the Supreme Court has articulated this principle as recently as 1997. So this is a powerful tool in our arsenal to protect liberty. Stay tuned. We're going to be right back right here on the Liberty Report with the great Chris Hall.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
I don't know about you, but I have to have that cup of coffee in the morning. And Kingdom Cup is mold-free, it is pesticide-free, and it is organic. It's got this flavor that is delicious. You don't even have to put cream or sweetener in it.
Why did we go with the bean form, the whole bean? Because ultimately the powder form is the one that gathers the most moisture. And that means the more potential mold development. This is actually organic, mold-free, certified. That's important because ultimately people drink coffee. It's cultural. And so we tried to meet the culture where it is and create a healthy alternative.
Make the healthy choice for you and your family. Try mold-free, pesticide-free, and it's organic. Delicious Kingdom Cup coffee. And it's available now at the Patriot TV store. Go to patriot.tv and click on store. You'll find Kingdom Cup coffee in the health and wellness section. Order Kingdom Cup coffee at the Patriot TV store now.
Welcome back to the Liberty Report. Alex Newman, your host here. Folks, thanks so much for staying with us. Do support our sponsors. They're the ones who keep us on the air. And folks, I want to remind you, there is a special category of people when it comes to Patriot TV. Those are our Patriot Defender members. Those are the ones who really help us pay the bills. They help us do what we're doing, keep the American people informed. We depend on you guys. And right now, if you use promo code Newman, you can get 10% off your subscription if you want to become a Patriot Defender member. It's going to give you all kinds of access. You're going to have access to exclusive content that's not available anywhere else. It is exclusive to Patriot TV. If you want it, you got to be a Patriot Defender member. You're also going to get some amazing deals at the Patriot TV store. And all of that is available if you just go to patriot.tv and then sign up to be a Patriot Defender member using the promo code Newman, you'll get a 10% discount. And folks, I joined Patriot TV. General Flynn asked me to join, and I was very honored by that. I've got plenty of stuff I need to do, but I recognize that there is very, very little happening, unfortunately, in the way of genuine media efforts to promote the truth, to stand for the truth, to stand against evil. And so it was a great honor to be able to participate in this. And I hope you will help support us and get some exclusive benefits by becoming a Patriot Defender member at patriot.tv. Again, that promo code is Newman. Joined today by Chris Hall. We had him on our first segment as well. We're going to hold him over for 2 segments because what he has to share is just so important, folks. He's a husband, he's a father, he's a grandfather. He's actually survived an airplane crash. I suspect God preserved his life for such a time as this. As we read about Esther, this was a miracle that he made it out of that. And he is now serving the citizens of Collier County, Florida, as the chairman of the county commission there. They passed an excellent ordinance to protect these rights. He is a Christian. He's a member of a church in Naples, Florida. He's actually a trainer and minister for Restoring the Foundations Ministry since 2016. He does amazing work all across the board. Chris, before we went to break, I mentioned the anti-commandeering doctrine. This is the way the Supreme Court articulated in a 1997 decision involving Sheriff Richard Mack, who's been a guest on this program. Talk to us about what that means when it comes to the county, when it comes to the county sheriff in relation to the federal government.
So anti-commandeering just means that they can't commandeer you. They can't make you do anything. And that's one of the reasons why we passed our Bill of Rights ordinance, to give the sheriff the teeth to say no to Tallahassee, to say no to the federal government, anywhere where the rights of the people are clearly violated. And it's not meant to have it's not meant to have to go to the courts to figure out if your rights are violated. It's meant to be common sense. When it's clear and it's obvious, the sheriff of Collier County can say, no, you can't come here to Collier County to commandeer or to get people to do what you want them to do. For instance, if just say 11,000 IRS agents descended onto Collier County and started going door to door, we require to see your financial records for the last 2 years. Give us your tax returns so that we can look at them. That's a clear violation. And so the sheriff could say to the IRS agents, if you come into Collier County to harass my people without due process, I'll arrest you. And he would have the authority to do that by the U.S. Constitution, by the Supreme Court's ruling of commandeering, no commandeering. And I'd love to see the look on their faces if he had to do that.
Yeah. And folks, some of this stuff may sound kind of abstract, although I think we all remember the last few years. But listen to one of the leading presidential candidates. Kamala Harris is openly telling us she's going to confiscate our guns. She said, I'd rather Congress do it, but if they don't act within 100 days, I'm going to use executive power. She's talking about mandatory gun buybacks. And the correct response then is for state governments and for county governments and for county sheriffs to say, look, anybody comes into our county and tries to rob our citizens and deprive them of their fundamental God-given rights, they're going to be treated just like any other criminal would be, right? They are not going to be commandeered by a out-of-control federal government. And this is, of course, exactly what the founders intended. And go read that decision. I'm going to read you one little excerpt that they included in their ordinance from this 1997 Supreme Court decision. It said it matters not whether policymaking is involved, and no case-by-case weighing of the burdens or benefits is necessary. Such commands are fundamentally incompatible with our constitutional system of dual sovereignty. Now, this was a case involving gun control. The Bill Clinton regime was trying to get Sheriff Mack and all the sheriffs in the country to help enforce this abomination of a gun control bill. Sheriff Mack said, and another sheriff said, we're not going to do that. We don't work for the federal government. We took an oath to the Constitution. We're not going to do that. And of course, after this Supreme Court victory, this is set in stone in Supreme Court precedent. Sheriffs don't work for the federal government. So in the findings in the ordinance, the Collier County Commission, actually, they said it's going to be titled the Bill of Rights Sanctuary County Ordinance, and they have a list of the rights enshrined in our Bill of Rights, in our Constitution, that must be protected. In fact, our founders said government exists for this. And so they said Collier County has the right to be free from from the commanding hand of the federal government and has the right to refuse to cooperate with federal government officials in response to unconstitutional federal government measures and to proclaim a Bill of Rights sanctuary for law-abiding citizens in its county. So then you guys have some definitions. You have prohibitions. Talk to us about this. What are some of the things that will not be tolerated within Collier County by anyone?
Free speech, the right to assemble, due process of law, unlawful searches, you name everything that's listed in those first 10 amendments for our Bill of Rights, we are going to protect to the extreme in Collier County. You know, the federal government is really bad about saying, and they'll flex their muscle. Well, we're the supreme law of the land. Well, that's true as long as what they're doing is in pursuance of the Constitution. Key words, you can never forget that, because you've got to know that. They're not the supreme, they're not just willy-nilly the supreme law of the land on anything they want to do. But as long as they're making laws that are in pursuance of the Constitution and in alignment with that, yes, we'll honor that as the supreme law. But they're really bad to flex their muscles and come at you like, well, if you don't do this, you're going to be in violation of the law.
Yeah, folks, it's so important to understand this. And this is something that unfortunately Americans don't learn anymore in their civics classes. It's not in the history textbook that you're going to read in your government school. The news isn't going to talk about it. But this was fundamental at the creation of our republic. Right? Chris just mentioned Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution, the so-called Supremacy Clause, which does say federal statutes and treaties are the supreme law of the land. But there's that big caveat. They have to be made in pursuance thereof. They have to be constitutional. And every one of the founders, including the most radical federal supremacists, people like Alexander Hamilton, all agreed with that. And they explained it very clearly in the Federalist Papers. You can go read Alexander Hamilton right now, Federalist number 78. He says, no legislative act contrary to the Constitution can be valid. He says, every act of a delegated authority contrary to the tenor of the commission under which it's exercised is not valid. In other words, the federal government cannot do things that were not delegated to it. He articulates this again in Federalist number 33. If a number of political societies enters into a larger political society, the laws which the latter may enact pursuant to the powers entrusted to it by its constitution must necessarily be supreme over those societies and the individuals of whom they are composed. But he goes on to say, it will not follow from this doctrine that acts of the large society which are not pursuant to its constitutional powers, but which are invasions of the residuary authorities of the smaller societies will become the supreme law of the land. These will be merely acts of usurpation and will deserve to be treated as such. And I, for one, am very grateful that in Collier County and more counties across the state of Florida and Nevada and New York and Oklahoma and all across this country, counties are saying, look, we're going to take that seriously. If you're going to usurp powers, we are not going to respect that. We are not going to help you do that in our jurisdiction. Chris, you guys have a number of other provisions in here. You've got penalties in here. So anybody within Collier County who is accused of violating this can be sued in circuit court. They can also be held punished under Section 1 through 6 of the Collier County Code of Ordinances with civil liability. So this is a really, really important measure, folks. I think it's hard to overstate the importance of this. I actually think it's better than the other ones that I have reported on out of the other states that have been working on this. But Chris, tell the folks out there how they can get involved. I mean, give us your story. Like you said, you were not involved in government until pretty recently, and yet you're now making a huge difference. How can our viewers, how can our listeners do something similar in their community?
Great question, and thank you for that. You know, what I've been involved in county government now for almost 2 years. And like I said, I never thought I would do anything like this. But what I have figured out is common sense has left America. Fear is rampant, and people are I'm talking about people in government. They're afraid to take a stand. They're afraid to do what's right just because it's right, because of pushback from the left. I got so much hate mail over this Bill of Rights thing. It ranged from I'm committing treason to I'm going to open up the county for lawsuits right and left and cost the taxpayers money. Stick in your lane, fix our roads and our traffic congestion and leave this alone. They were pretty creative in the way that they came after us. But we're screaming the people are screaming for quality candidates. And you don't have to have a law degree. You don't have to have a business degree. You got two things. I ran on two principles. I'll always treat you like I want to be treated, and I'm not going to spend more than we make. And so far, that's really worked out well. And just the common sense stuff and being bold. If God's for you, who can be against you? I really take that to heart. No weapon formed against me is going to prosper. And every tongue that rises against me in judgment, I condemn those words. So I condemn them digitally. I condemn them verbally. I condemn them in writing. And that's worked very well. And some of the resistance that we've got is just typical. It's the trivial few trying to affect the vital many. And I don't subscribe to that.
Now, Chris, what you're doing is so important. I know you know that. I'm very grateful for you and all the people like you who are standing firm in the face of threats from radical leftists who hate our country, people who want to overthrow our system of government, and doing the right thing. And Collier County all by itself is not going to be able to save America, folks. Collier County all by itself is not going to be able to save our country. But if your county and my county and thousands of counties and dozens of states across this country get serious about protecting our Constitution, which, by the way, everybody in government swore an oath to uphold. Every soldier, every policeman, every dog catcher, every legislator swore an oath to that precious document. We can turn this around, and we must turn this around for the sake of our children. Chris, is there any way for people to follow you? Are you on social media? Do you have a website that people can follow you? And how can people find this ordinance if they want to suggest it to their own county commissioners?
If you want this ordinance, I'd be glad to forward it to you.
I'll post it up at our website then, libertysentinel.org. When we post this episode, we'll post that there. You'll be able to find it, folks, at libertysentinel.org. And then, Chris, is there any way for people to follow you?
Yes, Chris Hall on Facebook. There's Instagram account. ChrisHallNaples.com is my website. I welcome all. I'll do whatever I can do to spread this information. Really, this ordinance is a cut and paste in Florida. It's bulletproof. I mean, it's well thought out, and I would not bring something forward with all of my other Republican commissioners. I would not bring something forward that had holes in it and leaks in it that they could, they could shoot it down. I wanted this thing to be 10 feet tall and bulletproof, and it was, and it really is. And if we can share it and get it out there and encourage every county to get this done, Florida will be a light and start a fire to burn across this whole nation. And I just would love to see that happen.
Amen. Me too, Chris. Me too. And we need to. I want to thank you for your leadership. I want to thank you for spending some time on the program with us today. You, sir, are doing great things for our country. When the history of our country is written, I think there's going to be a prominent place for you and people like you who took a stand, even knowing that there was going to be backlash. But thank you, sir. God bless you. And I hope we can talk to you again very soon.
Thank you so much for allowing me to share this. And I just say, God bless everybody and God bless America.
Thank you, brother. God bless you too. Thank you again for coming on the program. Folks, take my word for it. Now grab this video wherever you're watching us. Send it to the members of your county commission. It's not hard to find their email addresses. Tell them that you want something like this in your county. Send this to your state representative. Send this to your state senator. Tell them you want something like this in your state. This is how we can take back America peacefully, constitutionally, right? If you read this ordinance, it's just the Constitution. This is the thing that everybody took an oath to uphold. There's nothing radical. Forget the fake media. So don't just let Collier County and some of these other counties across the country stand alone. We all need to stand with them. And that is a peaceful, proven way that we can take back our country. I'm Alex Newman. I want to thank you for tuning into the Liberty Report today. I want to encourage you again to sign up, become a Patriot Defender member, patriot.tv. If you use the promo code Newman, you'll get a 10% discount. Share this out there. Be involved. Be in prayer for our country. Until next time, thanks for watching, and God bless you all.